We're ready to start harvesting our broad beans that were sowed back in November, and we're going to have a look at how to know when to harvest them, and then also how to double pod them and get them ready to be eaten or popped into the freezer for storage. I'm in South Shropshire. If you're further down south, then the chances are that more of yours are going to be ready. However, if you're further up north, they might not quite be ready yet. However, you may want to have a look at them and check whether or not they are to your liking, because we can harvest them at different stages. So towards the bottom of the plants is where we're going to start looking first of all for these. And the first sign that they're going to be starting to be ready is that they're pointing downwards. So as they get heavier, they do start pointing downwards. And then you want to give the pod a bit of a squeeze. And if it's reasonably full, then we can start looking at harvesting it. If it's still got a lot to give, then you may want to wait and let them grow a little bit longer. But I would suggest that you open one or two and just check how you like them first, and make sure that you don't allow them to get bigger if you do prefer them to be on the smaller size. If we do just pull these pods off, then we have a quite a high chance of actually snapping the plants further up. So we're just going to grab a pair of scissors or a knife or something and just snip them off of the plant. So just go back to where they meet the stem and just chop them off. This one still has a reasonable amount of give. I'm just going to have a quick open now and check how they're doing before I harvest too many. So I've just broken the pod and then run it down, and it will work as like a bit of a zip really. And then just open that pod up. There we go. So you can see there's some reasonably good sized beans inside there. And you will notice that there's like a wet, furry cushion on the inside of broad beans that are just really cool. So I'm going to go ahead and harvest some more. This is all the pods that I've harvested today. Some do have damage, so we'll have a look at those as we go through. But we're going to start the first podding. This is a double podding technique. If you've harvested them really small, then you might find that you're fine to do a single podding. So something's burrowed into these ones, so they're just going to go for the bin. So you can break the tops and then pull it down like a bit of a zip if you get it right, although it's not the easiest thing. All of mine have a fungal issue, so all of these are going to, all the pods and the stems and everything are going to be burnt or popped into the bin rather than into the compost, just to avoid spreading it. This is a lovely job to sit down with the family and a film and all do together. So if you've got people available, I would definitely recommend getting them involved. So once you've finished the first podding, or you've got somebody else to help you do it, then they should look something like this. Now we've got 3 different sizes here, so these are definitely going to need double podding. These probably don't need double podding, and they are very much up to choice of whether or not you think they want it. Next we're going to do is pop these into boiling water for 3 minutes. It can be salted if you'd like, and then we're going to have a bowl of ice water ready for them to go into afterwards. If you have grown filled beans rather than broad beans, then a single podding is usually fine from what I've found, but you could, of course, once again, double pod them. As soon as that 3 minutes up, we're just going to take these out and pop them straight into the ice cold water. As these do cool down in the cold water, and even before, you're going to see that they're starting to split. If you haven't put salt in your water, let this cool down and you can use it to water some plants outside or in the house plants as well. Just give them a bit of a swish around to keep them cooling down and so there's no hot spots that they're sitting in. They should cool down pretty quickly and be ready for the next stage pretty much straight away. By doing this, what it's going to do is make it really easy for us to split the outer of the bean, but it's also going to keep the insides really vibrant and green. So we're just going to pop it out of the shell, and then inside we've got like a kidney bean type shape, and that's what we're looking for. That's them all podded, and from that entire basket we've got one little breakfast bowl full of raw beans left. So as you can see, like I said at the very beginning, they grow along. You really don't get much once you have processed them. So the next thing I'm going to do is just drain these and then give them a rinse. So we're going to be eating these with our tea tonight. So we're just going to saute them and then cook them in a little bit of garlic butter for a couple of minutes. If you were, however, wanting to pop them in the freezer for eating later on, then just let them dry out, lay them onto a piece of parchment paper on a tray, and then pre-freeze them before actually popping them into a bag, so you can then take out what you need as and when you need it. Other ideas of how to cook them would be to add some spices and a little bit of oil, cook them down, and then dehydrate them, and it'll give you a little bit of a crispy snack. Or you can also add them to soups or stews, even stir fries to hide them from kids and things like that, and they disappear pretty quickly because you really don't get much from the harvest unless you have grown absolutely loads of them. If you have picked your beans but you can't actually manage to process them today, then you can pop them into the fridge and then do that within the next couple of days and they'll be fine. The other thing that you can do is actually harvest these pods when they're small and actually eat the whole pod. That's not something I've tried. Don't know why, it seems a bit weird to me, but that is an option as well. When we do take these plants out, if they are healthy and they're absolutely fine, then we can cut them off at the bottom, allow those roots, which will have nodules in, to stay in the ground, and that's going to help feed the ground for the next crops as well. And then just pop any foliage into the compost. Another thing that we might want to think about here is seed saving. So I'm not going to be saving any seeds from mine. One, because I have chocolate spot or brown spot, which is a fungal issue, and they won't then be healthy to save from. But also because there's a lot of field beans and things like that growing in the area around me. Ideally, we really want about 24 plants in order to save the seeds, and we do want an area where they are isolated from other varieties in order to keep them true to type. Commercially, this is around 1,000 meters between each one, but when we grow them at home, we do have physical barriers of beams and hedges and things that are going to make this less. But if you have got allotments that are right next to you and they're growing broad beans as well and they're flowering at the same time as yours did, then it is probably better to continue buying seeds. If you do want to give this a go, then you're just going to select the pods that are looking as typical to the type that you've grown. So for these, we've got a long pod variety, so we'd want them to be nice and free of any fungal issues or any changes on the outside of the pod, and then leave them to grow and to start drying out before we harvest them. You can pick them once they have started going sort of a yellowy, papery type colour, and then take the whole plant inside and hang it upside down somewhere. But usually at this time of the year, because we have started them last year, we should be fine leaving them on the plants in place. And then once they have dried out as well as they can on the plant, we're going to pod them. And at that point, we want to dry those beans a little bit further by just sitting them in a bowl and letting them air dry. You may at that point find that you have some weevils that are in the beans, but this very rarely actually causes an issue with the continuation of germination from there. At that point, we're going to also want to take out any beans that don't look quite right and only save the ones that are consistent with the others, and then pop them into a paper envelope ready to be sown again in November. That is going to be the end of this grow along now, and hopefully my plants will be coming out in the next couple of weeks when the rest of the pods are ready. But after that, we can plant anything in there that isn't in the bean family. So I'm trying to think what's going in after mine. I think it's probably brassicas, Swedes and things like that. So do start thinking about sowing things now if you haven't already, and check out what to sow in June if you're not quite sure what to do. But if you have enjoyed this grow along, then I'd really appreciate some comments and pictures sent as well of how your beans have done. Anything to help interact would be really helpful. I hope that you've got a really good harvest and you enjoy these broad beans.